1 to 4 o'clock, a lot of us were not enjoying the day as the Lions, unfortunately, today fall to the Minnesota Vikings 27-24. Just not what anybody expected. The Lions were double-digit favorites going into this game, and I think if you asked most Lions fans before this game started, they would have thought this was going to be a blowout today. Like it just seemed like everything was shaping up. The Lions were coming off a bye week. This was JJ McCarthy's first game back after a long injury. I think he missed like the previous 5 games. He's still, a very young quarterback. Vikings haven't been playing, that well. And the Vikings come in here and get the 27-24 win. What were your initial thoughts, looking back at this game, Brian?
I mean, I'm with everybody else. Like I thought this was a game the Lions should win and should win pretty handedly. And that obviously wasn't the case. I think I was pretty impressed with JJ McCarthy today. Like his numbers
Yeah,
weren't, off the charts, right? But he played pretty well and made plays when he had to. And he made plays with his legs when he had to. And that big third down with on their final drive to Naylor, that big third down throw and catch, like that was a great
yeah,
ball. So that stood out to me. And but it's the NFL, and maybe we shouldn't be surprised. I mean, Kevin O'Connell is a good coach, and he had a good game plan. And the Vikings have a lot of veterans, and they're pretty prideful. They were a playoff team. They were a game away a year ago from being the number one seed in the NFC, and so I know they struggled a little bit to start the season, but it's possible I'm also just making myself feel better as a Lions fan today because there was a lot of things they did not do well. I don't think they pass
yeah,
protected really well. I don't think Jameer Gibbs got enough touches. We finally found some or saw some JMO plays in the second half, but not enough, and just not a good loss at all. I don't think anybody looked at this game and say, "Oh, okay, you know what? That's a game that could go either way." I don't think anybody felt that. I'd be curious to see how many of the sports experts in Minnesota picked the Vikings to win today. I
yeah.
doubt there were many. But again, that's the NFL.
Yeah, I think the most shocking thing to me is the lack of a running game for the Lions. 20 carries for 65 yards total, 3.3 average. Gibbs only had 25 yards on 9 carries, Montgomery 40 yards on 11 carries, and then Gibbs in the passing game had 3 catches for 3 yards. And after his explosive game Monday Night Football a couple of weeks ago, where he had over 200 total yards and just really dominated that game, man, Minnesota just shut him down and shut the Lions run game down. I think that is concerning and shocking from this game.
It is, and the Vikings defensive line played really well, and Brian
Oh my
Flores,
God,
they were
dominant.
really well, right? And you could argue they were the best unit on the field today for either team,
Yeah.
and Brian Flores, again, defensive coordinator, has been a head coach, like he knows what he's doing. So again, like maybe we shouldn't be surprised, but but I'm with you. Like the Lions just seem to be in a funk from the get go. It looked like
Well, they
Minnesota.
had that first drive. They had the
Well,
first
it's
drive where
funny. Well,
they looked dominant the first
that
drive. We're
is
like, oh man, they go up 7-0. You think, man, the route is on now.
right. I'll give you that the first drive, but we've talked before the first drive, like it's hard to simulate game speed in practice, right? For
Yeah.
defenses, and offenses. That's why, like as a coach, I always like taking the ball first just because I feel you have that advantage. And but other than that, that entire first quarter just seemed a little bit right? Like you could tell something was off a little bit. And um it reminded me of, was it a couple of years ago or was it last year when the Lions got smoked by the Bills? It was last year, wasn't it last year?
Last
Remember the
year, yeah.
line last year, right?
Yep.
And like the Bills are a better team than the Vikings, but like the juice just wasn't there, right? It just felt like the juice wasn't there. And again though, it's hard. I had lunch today with a former player of mine. It was really cool when we were talking about stuff, and we kind of talked about how, gosh, like even though they didn't win the Super Bowl, how impressive was it for the Patriots to go undefeated? Because again, it like so many things have to go right, right, for that to happen. And maybe the Minnesota gives them credit, like their season was on the line. Like if they lose this game and go to 3-5, like they're 3 games behind the Lions, and they're gonna have a hard time, catching them. And so to them, could argue it was their biggest game up to this point, give them credit, like you said, their defense and their defensive line played extremely well.
Yeah, I mean, definitely playing with some desperation with their season, like you said, on the line. But I think the biggest takeaway nationally is going to be the play of JJ McCarthy. And if he continues on a run and has a good season, he has a long career, like you're going to look back at this game as just kind of his coming out party. And even though the stats don't really show it as much, like if you watch that game, like he just continued to make plays, like whether it was making plays with his feet to get first downs, whether it was, just creating more time for himself to get the ball downfield. But there was some pass plays where, there was some deep out patterns that he was able to put on the money that those are the throws that separate you from being a good NFL quarterback and a quarterback that's not going to make it in this league. And he was making those throws today. And then you talked about the Naylor throw, the last completion, the kind of the backyard fade, kind of or back shoulder fade, excuse me. And just, I mean, the coverage wasn't that bad by Millette. You'd prefer, if you're a Lions fan, you'd prefer like not Millette to be the one that's in that coverage. And it kind of goes back to their injuries in the secondary. But his coverage
Yeah.
wasn't bad. That was just an
Sure.
absolutely perfect throw and a great catch and a great route and just like a fantastic play on the Vikings' part to make that play.
I definitely noticed that it was ironic. It was a Michigan quarterback to a Michigan State receiver, which was kind of cool to have the winning
Yeah.
play for the Vikings. Which was a side note, side topic. But the quarterback's most important job, right? You ask any coach, is they got to lead their team to a win, right? However you do it, And Troy Aikman didn't put up gaudy numbers. He let Michael Irvin and Emmett Smith do that, and but he was a winner and he won games. So yeah, absolutely. JJ McCarthy, he had the one interception, but other than that, again, fantastic game by him.
Yeah, absolutely. And so where do we go here with the Lions, Brian? They're 5-3 now. That's already more losses than last season. And it goes to show you how impressive that 15-2 season was last year because God, is it hard to win in the NFL, man. Week to week, it is difficult to win. But you look at this division because Green Bay had a very surprising loss to the
Mm.
Carolina Panthers today. And with the Bears winning and obviously the Vikings winning, now the division has gotten super, super close now. And when you thought, just a week ago, you thought really this is going to be a two-team race. All of a sudden, you look at the standings, and now all four teams are in play, and this is going to be a battle to the end. Now, all four teams are going to be involved.
It is, and we had talked about on one of our earlier shows how much more difficult the schedule is this year compared to the prior couple of years for the Lions. And um, it's funny though, looking at the schedule, I don't think this was a game that people would have said, "Oh, that's uber tough one." All right, it was more the Kansas City, the Tampa Bay, and the Baltimore and Green Bay. And speaking of Green Bay, you mentioned it. Like this loss felt like the worst they've played since that Week 1 Green Bay loss, right? And the Lions responded. The Lions
Yeah,
responded pretty well to that, right? Putting up 52 against Chicago. So I'm not overly concerned. The challenging part now, if you looking at their again the tough schedule, is the next two games are away, right, at Washington and at Philadelphia.
yep,
So Washington isn't playing great right now. They're 3-5 and not necessarily healthy, but man, it's still on the road in the NFL. And and the Lions had obviously lost to them in the playoffs last year. So I think if you're a Lions fan, you're hoping to. I mean, if you split one of these next two, I'm not saying they can't win both, but you split one of these next two, and then you are 6-4 going into this stretch where they should be the favorite in every game against the Giants, home games, the Giants, the Packers on Thanksgiving, and then the Cowboys on Thursday night. So you would think, in theory, the Lions favored to win those games, and you're at 9-4. Boom, like you're feeling pretty good, going into those final couple games. But if they, if they're 5-5 in 2 weeks, we're having this conversation. Ooh, that's
yeah,
that's scary. That's scary. And you're
yeah,
right. And
yeah.
it's funny you mentioned the Packers losing today. Like, yeah, they're the Lions are still the best team in this division, right? Like that's a young
I think
again
so
young court. You
too.
know what I mean? Young quarterback. Like, how do you lose to Cleveland and then how do you lose at home to Carolina? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think like as bad as the Vikings. And I don't even know if the Vikings were again a game away a year ago from being the number one seed. So this isn't a
They just
horrible
like quality quarterback play.
for sure.
If they're
Yep.
going to get
For
quality quarterback play from JJ, then
totally,
that changes the whole narrative of where this
totally,
division's going to go.
totally does. And but yeah, like so the Lions, you look at it that way, like okay, I still think regardless of the standings today, it's their division to lose.